Hello there, and welcome to Central Lutheran Online. It's so awesome that you're all tuning in with us today. My name is Clay Howard, and I am the Communications Director here at Central. I'm so glad to be with all of you this morning here at Central Lutheran Online. I also want to give a special shout out to our friends Bethel Lutheran Church up in New Auburn. If you're watching online with us, thank you so much for being with us this morning here. Now, if you're new to Central, please don't forget to say hi in the chat below. We'd love to connect with you. I also want to encourage you to head on over to central-lutheran.org, click on Next Steps, and then click on Connect. There you can learn more about who we are as a church. Or you can also pick up your smartphone or tablet and head to your app store. There you can search for Central Lutheran Church, and there you can download our app, fill out a Connect card. You can also watch past sermons and set up online giving. There's tons of awesome stuff to do on there. Now, if you've been around Central for a while, you have probably heard that we want to be a church that is known for what we are for, and we are for Chippewa. Now, one of the ways that we are for Chippewa is by how we serve and do good in the community. Serving opportunities throughout the year give us the opportunity to truly be the church to our neighbors. Now, if you're interested in serving or want to learn about the ways that you can serve your neighborhood, you can head over to central-lutheran.org/serve. There you can sign up for a project and learn more about serving opportunities. In fact, one of those opportunities is approaching us fast. Cram the Cruiser. The Ellie Phillips Career Development Center Outreach Office, Chippewa Falls Police Department, and Family Fair will be holding their first annual Cram the Cruiser food drive on Saturday, June 5th, 2021 from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. in the Family Fair parking lot at 212 Bay Street, Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin. Outreach office staff and officers will be collecting non-perishable food items and goods to be donated to the Outreach Office's food pantry, supporting Chippewa County residents. Please try to add it to your calendar, stop by, and buy some food donations to go to a great cause. Let's continue to be #4Chippewa. Now, with summer quickly approaching and COVID still a concern, the staff of Central have decided to make some changes to our service times over the summer. Starting on May 18th, we will be pausing our Wednesday modern worship services over the summer. Those modern worship services will be moved to Sundays starting on June 6th. Traditional will be at 8:30 and modern will start at 10 a.m. And our online service, this right here, will also be streamed Sundays at 9 a.m. Thanks for being understanding and flexible as we go through these ever-changing times. Save the date for this summer's VBS. Yeah, you heard that right. It's been a few summers since we've had VBS, and this year we are mixing it up and providing 2 full days of fun on August 10th and 11th. Now, we are currently seeking volunteers for those 2 fun-filled days. You can head to Central's website for more information. All right, guys, it's time for worship. So let's get right into it. Thanks so much for being here today at Central Lutheran Online.
Darkness falls, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I serve knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. My God will never fail. I'm gonna see a victory, and I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. And I'm gonna see a victory. And I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord.
Hey kids, thanks so much for being here today. Today is our last week of Battles and Blessings, and we are continuing the story of Joshua. Now, when Joshua and his people crossed over the Jordan River, they would have been able to see the city because it sat up on a hill. It was a stronghold of Canaanites. It would have been terrifying to them because these people would have never seen a city like that before. It would have been a fortified city with these big, huge, tall walls. Now, remember, they grew up in the wilderness, so they would have never seen a skyline like this before. Walls this high, and the closer they got, the bigger the walls seemed, and the more impossible it felt. There were actually two walls around Jericho. The first one was about 15 feet high. It was about 6 feet thick. Then there was another wall behind that, and that wall behind was twice as tall. And the city wasn't huge. It was only about 6 acres. But the walls were ginormous. And the Israelites were facing something that they had never faced before. It seemed impossible, which has me thinking, what's your Jericho in your life? What's the thing in your life that you are looking at, and the more you look at it, the more it seems impossible? The more you study it, the more fear creeps in. And you have measured the walls, and you've counted the stones, and you have run the numbers, and you can't see how it's going to work. What do you do with the impossibility? What do you do when the battle is bigger than you? Well, Joshua chapter 5, Joshua says this, or the story says this. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us, or are you for our enemies?"
Neither. But as the commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come.
Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" The commander of the Lord's army replied,
Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy.
Now, the first thing, when we're facing impossible circumstances, what we have to do is we have to surrender to God, give it to God. And the second thing after surrender is to define what is the problem. First, we surrender. Then second, we define reality. And then we ask God for his plans. And then the last thing is, don't give up. Have a great week, everybody.
Hey, Aaron, did you see my super cool sword?
Here at Central, we believe that everybody is welcome here because no one is perfect, and through Jesus, anything is possible. And because everybody is welcome, we want to expand our reach to help more people find and follow Jesus. So, if you want to learn more about Central and to be a part of the mission through your generosity, I want to invite you to central-lutheran.org/give. There, you can set up a recurring gift. You can give a one-time gift, and you can learn more about what it means to be Forward Chippewa. You could also text CLGIVE to 206-859-9405 to get it set up that way as well. It's that easy. This week, Pastor Aaron will be preaching us through our sermon series titled Battles and Blessings. It's going to be such an impactful time for all of us, as well as our community. So let's jump right in. Welcome to Central Lutheran Online.
Have you ever faced what feels like an impossible circumstance? Or better yet, have you faced a situation where you thought, man, this just seems impossible? And maybe that is where you are at right now, or where you have been these past couple of months. Maybe at work, business, or maybe in your marriage. Maybe it's one of your kids. Maybe a financial crisis that is going on, or a situation with a family member. A situation that when you look at it, you think, it's never going to change. A habit or an addiction. And today we're going to talk about what you are going to do when you face impossible circumstances in your life, when you are up against the battles that just seem bigger than you. Today, we are in our final week of Battles and Blessings, and we are looking at Joshua chapter 6. And this series has been speaking to the battles and the blessings that we all have going on in our lives. And no matter how big your battles are, there is always something to be grateful for. And no matter how blessed you are, there's always something to improve on. Battles and blessings. They're both going on in our lives simultaneously. And that's what we have going on right now. The other day, I was talking to a friend of mine. He is newly married, and he's working from home and has no kids yet. And he said, you know what, Pastor? These past 14 months have been the most restful and refreshing time of my life. And I have talked with other people who have lost their jobs or taken pay cuts, and marriages are struggling, house full of kids, right? And you're teaching your kids and dealing with the levels of loneliness, anxiety, and depression like they have never known. And the truth is, we all have had very different experiences of the past 14 months. So we can't assume that other people have had our experience. But where we have been blessed, we have to ask ourselves, how can I be a blessing to others? Like Jeff. Jeff sent me this email, and I want to read this email for you. He sent it last summer. He says, my name is Jeff, and I started attending Central 2 years ago at a time where I was at the lowest point in my life that I've ever been. And I had nowhere to turn. And since that day, God began doing amazing work in me that I didn't deserve. My wife and I began working on our marriage and strengthened our relationship. I've been sober now for just over a year and a half now. But back to why I'm reaching out. Today, I received a stimulus check from the government that I was not expecting to get. And now, I want to do something good with it. I want to help a family that is struggling right now. I mean, come on, church, isn't that good? God got a hold of Jeff's life and changed him. And now he is like, man, God has blessed me, so I want to be a blessing to somebody else. So we helped to get Jeff connected to a single mom who had been furloughed, and he was able to pay her rent for 1 month. See, we all have battles, and we all have blessings. But listen, we can't wait to have a battle-free life to then be a blessing to other people, because there is no such thing as a battle-free life. We just look at the blessings we have and we ask, how can I be a blessing to others with what I have received? Now, in Deuteronomy chapter 8, I want you to hear about the conversation that Moses has with the nation of Israel. He is telling the nation that the land that they're going to go to is good land, that God has land for us, and it's a blessing. So here's what it says. For the Lord your God is bringing you into a good land, a land with brooks, streams and deep springs gushing out into the valleys and the hills, a land with wheat and barley, vines and fig trees, pomegranates, olive oil and honey, a land where bread will not be scarce and you will lack nothing, a land where the rocks are iron and you can dig copper out of the hills. What Moses is doing is he's painting a picture of the promised land. He is giving them a vision of a wilderness, a vision that will help them to keep going. Why? Because hope is what pulls us into the future. And God gives them a vision. He says that this land is going to be a blessing, but you are going to have battles to fight. And that's why God told Joshua to be strong and be courageous, because I am with you. I am with you wherever you go. Joshua, there are going to be blessings, but the greatest blessing is that, Joshua, I am with you. And if you place your trust in Jesus, the Spirit of the living God lives in you. That is the blessing in life. It's the blessing in life that I would not trade for anything in this world. To know that God is with me. And you can know that too. To put your trust in Jesus Christ. And Joshua, he needs the courage. Because he's leading 1 million people into the promised land. And the Jordan River is all that stands between Joshua and the Israelites and the promised land. Now, the Jordan River is at flood stage, and so he has to figure out how to get all of these people from here over to the other side of the bank in a flood. How do you get 1 million people to the other side of a river that's over its banks? This seems impossible, but impossibility is not in God's vocabulary. Joshua seeks and lingers with the Lord, and then God does something amazing. He parts the water, and the nation of Israel, the entire nation, 1 million people, walks through on dry ground. Just like God parted the Red Sea with Moses, God parts the waters of the Jordan for Joshua. And he said, Joshua, I don't want you to forget this. And he tells Joshua, I want you to get 12 men from each tribe, and I want you to stack 12 stones on top of each other as a reminder, so that whenever you look at these stones, when your children look at these stones and your children's children see these stones, that they will ask, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, what are these stones for? And that you tell them about how I got you across. Tell them about my rescuing hands. Tell them that God saved you and delivered you and made a way for you. And Joshua climbed up on those stones and said, God, you are a way maker. You're a miracle worker, a promise keeper, a light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Joshua saw God make a way, just like we can see God make a way for us. But Joshua would need that experience because, listen, 5 miles away from that river, from crossing the Jordan River, Israel would face their first battle in the Promised Land. They would face Jericho. Now, if you ever make it to the Holy Land, you can actually go and see and climb on and walk around the ruins of Jericho. And when you read the archaeological studies of Jericho, it is believed to be the oldest city in the world. Now, when they crossed over the Jordan River, they would have been able to see the city because the city sat up on a hill. It was the stronghold for the Canaanites. And it would have been terrifying to them because these people would have never seen a city like this before. It would have been a fortified city with these walls. Now remember, they grew up as slaves. They grew up in the wilderness. So they would have never seen a city skyline like this before. Walls this high before. And the closer they got, the bigger the walls would get. And the more impossible the battle felt like. There were actually 2 walls that surrounded Jericho. Now, the first wall was about 15 feet high, and it was about 6 feet thick. Then, behind that one was another wall, and that wall was twice as tall. And I want to tell you, the city of Jericho actually wasn't a huge city. It was only about 6 acres big, but the walls were huge. And the Israelites were facing something that they had never faced before. It seemed impossible, which has me thinking, what's your Jericho? What's the thing in your life that you are looking at right now? And the more you look at it, the more it seems impossible. The more you study it, the more fear creeps into your life. And you have measured the walls, you have counted the stones, you have run the numbers, and you can't see how this is going to work. What do you do with impossibility? What do you do when the battle in your life seems bigger than you? From Joshua chapter 6, I want to give you five key principles to take with you into the battle. And I cheated a bit. It's not just Joshua chapter 6. I had to rewind our tape, and I had to go back to the end of chapter 5. And I want you to look there with me. Joshua chapter 5, verse 13. Now, when Joshua was near Jericho, he looked up and saw a man standing in front of him with a drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went up to him and asked, "Are you for us or for our enemies?" "Neither," he replied, "but as commander of the army of the Lord, I have now come." Then Joshua fell face down to the ground in reverence and asked him, "What message does my Lord have for his servant?" And the commander of the Lord's army replied, "Take off your sandals. Joshua, take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did just that. Joshua has an encounter with God, and this is where the battle of Jericho is won. Because before the walls of Jericho fall, Joshua had to fall on his face. At first, he didn't realize who he was talking with. You're like, are you with us, or are you for them? Are you on our side, or are you on their side? Are you with their political party or with ours? And God says, neither. I don't fit into your boxes. So the question is not, am I on your side? The question God is asking is, are you on my side? Will you surrender to me? The first thing when facing impossible circumstances, what we have to do is surrender to God. We have to take off our sandals or our shoes. It's holy ground, and embracing the truth that I am not in charge and I am not in control. Joshua was in charge of the army, but God was in charge of Joshua. And he needed to settle this before he went to battle. You remember Jeff's email? Where he said, I gave my life to the Lord. I trusted in the Lord. That's where victory begins. When you surrender and give your life back to the Lord. And if there's one thing that these past 14 months have taught us, is this, that we are not in control. And there is only one thing that you can control, and that one thing is you. And you can control yourself maybe on a good day. They call that self-control. And in Galatians 5, it tells us that self-control is a fruit of the Spirit, which means self-control is a byproduct of God's Spirit living in us. And the only way we have self-control is when we put God in control and tell God, I'm depending on you to run the show. I'm signing over my rights to my life to you, God. I'm giving you that country song. I'm handing the wheel over to you. Take the wheel, God. And Joshua takes off his sandals as a sign of giving his life to God. And he gets down on his face and says, God, I report to you now. I wonder if Joshua didn't need this moment after crossing the Jordan River, because it says in Joshua 4:14, that day the Lord exalted Joshua in the sight of all Israel, and they stood in awe of him all the days of his life, just as they stood in awe of Moses. When God exalts you and blesses you, it's your responsibility to humble yourself, to continue to get on your face and to be dependent upon him. Like, people might put you on a pedestal at times, and what do you do when you're put on a pedestal? You climb off and get on your face before God. See, God wants to bless you more, but he can't bless pride. 1 Peter 5:5-6, it says, God oppresses the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. Therefore, humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. See, pride in our life says, I got this. But humility says, God, you got this. God, I depend on you. I'm not in charge. You are in charge. I'm not in control. You're in control. That's surrender. And the second thing after surrender is to actually define your problem. What's the battle you are facing? And the first response as any leader is to define the challenge. You have to name your Jericho. In Luke chapter 18, it says that Jesus was walking down the street, and there's a blind man by the name of Bartimaeus. And he yells out, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus looks at Bartimaeus. He looks at him and says, what do you want me to do for you? Which seems a little odd. I mean, it seems a little odd to have Jesus ask a blind man what do you want me to do for you? I mean, come on, you're Jesus after all. Do you not know what this blind man wants? But Jesus still asks him. Why? Because Jesus wants to know. Bartimaeus, do you know what you want? Because it takes faith to name it. It takes faith to ask. It takes faith to face your Jericho. And maybe your Jericho is fear about the future. Maybe it's a private world of addiction that consumes your life. Maybe there is a relationship that has turned sideways and there is bitterness and unforgiveness, and that relationship is just draining you. Maybe it's an attitude in which you are believing in a lie about yourself, and it keeps you from joy and peace and rest. Maybe it's guilt or shame that you carry from your past. And Jesus asks the question, what do you want? Maybe what you need is a blank sheet of paper and that question. One who can make blind eyes see and can give us the courage and the spiritual eyes to face the Jerichos in our lives. And Joshua stared at his Jericho. And look and see what happens in Joshua chapter 6, 1-5. Now the gates of Jericho were securely barred because of the Israelites. No one went out and no one came in. Then the Lord said to Joshua, see, I have delivered Jericho into your hands, along with its king and its fighting men. March around the city once with all the armed men. Do this for 6 days. Have 7 priests carry trumpets of ram's horns in front of the ark. On the 7th day, march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the trumpets. When you hear them sound a long blast on the trumpets, have the whole army give a loud shout. Then the wall of the city will collapse, and the army will go up, and everyone straight in. I love that story. So first, we surrender. Second, we define reality. And then we ask God for God's plans. God, what do you want me to do? And when it comes to plans, when it comes to facing our Jericho, a lot of the times we don't even ask God what his plans are. We just come up with our own plans and we work our plans out and we do it without God. And we wonder, man, why on earth do I keep running into walls? Well, it's because we're doing our plans. And then there are other times where we come up with our plans and then we pray and we ask God to bless our plans. But the third option is to pray and then wait on God to give us his plans and to do what he wants. And God gives Joshua a very specific plan, actually an odd plan. I mean, I imagine Joshua. Okay, God, let me get this right. You want us to walk around the city 1 time every day for 6 days, okay? And then be silent and not say anything. But on the 7th day, you want us to march around the city 7 times, and then you want us all to shout, and then all the walls are going to fall down? I mean, that's it? That's what you want us to do? I mean, can you imagine Joshua? He has to give that plan to 40,000 soldiers. Can you imagine that? Joshua probably knew that there were going to be people who didn't agree with his plans, which is fine. Because listen, your job as followers of Jesus isn't to please everyone. Your job is to honor God, to please God. And there will be times when God's plans don't make sense, like walking around in circles, like praying in circles, like holding your hands up in worship, getting on your face in prayer, picking up the phone, calling someone you haven't talked to in 14 years and asking forgiveness. Plans like forgiving somebody else who hurt you, going back and saying sorry, or being generous to someone who is in need. Sometimes those plans are going to feel odd, strange, and awkward. Some might even feel uncomfortable. But God gives us his peace, so we follow the plan that God gives us. But until we know the specifics of that plan, let me give you a plan that actually works. That plan is this: walk and pray. Walk and pray. This week, get out and walk. And when you are walking, pray. Walk your neighborhood. Pray. Walk circles in your neighborhood and pray for your neighbors. Pray circles around your kids. Pray circles around our schools. Pray circles around our businesses. Pray circles around your house. Pray circles around your Jericho. And you can pray something like this: God, you are in charge. You are in control. And I surrender everything to you. And I give you my Jericho. And I ask you to tear down the walls. Give me the faith to trust you and the courage to do what you say. The battle belongs to you. I mean, that's your prayer. Just pray something like that. A great prayer that I learned that I read in a devotion a while back is this: I surrender everything and everyone to you. Amen. And that's it. So just keep praying that. Do what the Israelites did. They walked and they prayed. And then the last thing is don't give up. Think about this. If the Israelites would have stopped walking around the city on day 6, they would have forfeited the miracle that was about to happen. So, what if your miracle is just one more day away? Don't give up. And sometimes Faithfulness is just getting out of bed. Sometimes faithfulness is just the faith to take one more step. And it's in those repetitions, in getting up for the next day, that's when faith shows up. Repetition is simply that, going to God and saying to God, who else am I going to trust? Who else can I turn to? Who else do I have but you, God? I trust in you. So maybe right now in your world and in your life, it's still dark for you. Maybe you feel alone. Reach out for help. Maybe the walls feel real big and you feel real small. Keep walking. You are not alone, and God is with you. And listen, we are with you too. And maybe you need somebody to pray with you about your situation. This church, Central Lutheran, we would love to do that. In fact, we have a team of people right now, right here, who want to pray with you. So reach out. Email us. Fill out a prayer card, message us, put it in the chat below. We would love to pray with you. And listen, there are things in my past, places that I made a mess of, that I can say now lay in ruins. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen because I'm a good person. It happened because He is good. It happened because of trusting and surrendering and holding to the truth of God's promises in my life and letting go of my false premises. And you know what one of your pastor's false premises is? This idea that I'm never going to be free. I'll always be a slave to sin. This will always be a stronghold in my life. And as long as I believed that, the enemy had me. And one day I had enough faith to believe that, hey, Jesus actually died for my freedom, and I don't have to go down that road again. And something changed and the walls began to fall. So what do? We surrender to God. Define the problem. Get real with the problem. Ask God His plans, and then we follow. And we don't give up. So what I want to do as we close out this series, I want to lead you in this prayer. And I want let this prayer be your prayer. Today, let me pray this prayer for you. So wherever you're watching from, wherever you're joining from, bow your heads and let this prayer be your prayer. Father, thank you for loving me. Thank you for sending your Son, Jesus, to die on the cross for me. Today, I surrender my life to you. This is holy ground. I want you to be the Lord of my life. I want to follow you here on earth and spend forever in heaven. I receive your forgiveness and I receive your grace. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks so much for joining us for worship today. We hope and pray that you will have a safe and wonderful week. Please never hesitate to reach out to us if you need prayer or need to meet with Pastor Aaron. We will see you all next time right here at Central Lutheran Online.